Hello, this is an important video regarding Australia study visa and funding requirement. I'll try to cover as much as I can in this video. In this video, we are going to cover these basic topics. When is the funding required? Why is the funding required? What is the funding required? Paying tuition fees and buying OSHC. And later on, confirmation of enrollment, which is known as COE, and applying for the visa. First of all, when is the funding required? Basically, it is a 7-step process. Basically, the funding is required at the JSR stage, means after the receiving of the offer letter from the university. In Australian admission process, students are required to fulfill this GSR requirements. For the people to whom GSR is new, JSR recently got replaced by GTE requirement effective from 23rd March 2024. Every student who is applying to Australia visa had to go through JSR requirements. Now, how does this JSR is different from GTE requirement? A separate video will come soon. Why is the funding required? There are numerous factors when a student is assessed on JSR. Major parameters are financials and incentives of returning back to home country. These are the reasons why student is asked to provide funds, ITRs, and whatever the home ties they can provide. In financials, they are checking the accessibility of liquid funds and assessing the student's financial capability, that they are capable to study in Australia. Do they have the sufficient funds? Do their family can support them to study in Australia? These all factors are assessed in these two parameters. Now the other factor, intentions to return to their home country, involves ITRs of the sponsorer. Basically, what does the student have in India? Incentives to return back to their home country is only shown through ITRs. Writing it in any form of story in SOP will not help you. Now, who does this funding assessment? It is done by the agent, it is done by the university and college, and finally by the DHA. Now, we come to the point, what is the funding required? These are the three factors which are considered when the show fund requirement is to be calculated. Average fee, let us consider, is to be 35,000 Australian dollar. When a student is applying to a group of 8 university, it can be as high as 50,000 as well. Or if the student is applying to a private institute, it can be as low as 20,000 Australian dollar. On an average, I had considered a 35,000 AUD. Living expense of 29,710, which were recently increased from 24,505 effective from 10th of May. 29,710 is the current living expense for a single student. Travel expense of 2,500 all included. It comes out to be 67,210 Australian dollars. In INR, it is 37,63,000. So this is the funding requirement. This is the show fund requirement which students need to show as a liquid funding available in their account, which is approx 37,63,760. If we do the round off, it is approx 38 lakhs. Apart from this funding requirement, student needs to purchase OHHC for the entire duration of the course. Now we come to the next point, who can sponsor the student? It can be parents, grandparents. Grandparents can be maternal and paternal both. They can sponsor 50%. Siblings, brother and sister, 50%. Student himself and herself, uncle, 25%. Non-acceptable sponsors are cousins, family friends, and distant relatives. Now we know who all can sponsor the students. Now moving on to what all type of funds are acceptable. The funds can be shown in the form of education loan. Funds can also be shown in the form of personal loans on parent name, balance in saving bank account, fixed deposits, and funds in PPF as well. So this all are the acceptable funds in which student can show this saving and availability of liquid funds. First of all, education loan should be availed from an acceptable financial institute. It should not be in principle or conditionally sanctioned. It has to be fully sanctioned. There should not be any condition. Disbursement of education loan for at least one semester is mandatory for Australia study visa. Any bank who is denying to disburse the tuition fees before getting the visa, please convince the bank manager to do so. Because if the student is relying on education loan, you cannot lodge a visa without the disproof of disbursement. Now I'm not going to stretch it more, but the basic requirement, the other very important requirement is valuation report of the property collateral security. It can be asked for immovable property or fixed deposits. This should be on the name of the immediate family members. It should not be anything as such ki property is of someone else and you had taken the education loan on that property. Evidence of loan disbursement, disbursement letter and loan account statement will be required for COE and visa. Okay, I guess everything is clear. Now we'll move on the next acceptable funding, which is saving and FDs. Even though it looks very simple that the type of saving bank statements and FDs are accepted, but this is what it is very challenging when it comes to the actual JSR assessment from the university. We will see how to tackle each of this one by one. Statements covering transaction from the last 3 to 6 months will be asked. The reason for asking 3 to 6 months is because student needs to mention the required amount for 3 months at least. Is not maintained for 3 months, one has to do, or if it is a recent transaction into the account or FD which is recently made, one has to show the proof of resource of this fund. It means कि हमें 3 से 6 महीने की स्टेटमेंट देनी है. Clearly it is asked because कि ऑस्ट्रेलियन यूनिवर्सिटीज़ को चाहिए कि बच्चे के अकाउंट में एटलीस्ट 3 महीने के लिए वो अमाउंट है. इफ़ नॉट, अगर वो हमारे खाते में नहीं है और हमने एक रीसेंट ट्रांजैक्शन की है, देन वी हैव टू गिव द रिसोर्स कि वो पैसा आया कहाँ से. अगेन आई एम गोइंग टू रिपीट दिस. If we had made a recent transaction into the account, the fund is recent, we have to give the resource of that fund. Means from where we got that amount of money. Accounts with OD limit, auto sweep accounts are accepted. Accounts with overdraft limit, auto sweeps are accepted, but not all the universities and colleges accept that. And in terms of FDs, date of maturity of the FD should exceed the course start date. Now moving on to acceptable financial institutes. SBI, any nationalized bank, other public sector banks or private sector banks like which can be an Indian bank and foreign bank like HSBC Bank as well, and the regional rural banks. Non-acceptable funds are funds in post office, funds in cooperative banks, investment in shares or mutual funds, funds held in PF accounts of GPF and EPF, NBFCs except HDFC Credilia. Now this is also important that many people have funds in non-acceptable forms, that they have the funds in post office and cooperative banks. Now what they can do is they can transfer these funds from their post office or cooperative banks or mutual whatsoever form they have into acceptable financial institutes, which can be SBI or any nationalized bank or anyone I mentioned earlier. In summary, I can say that the non-acceptable funds can be transferred to acceptable financial institutes. We can give the source and we can give all sort of proofs that we have maintained our funds from non-acceptable to acceptable, which can be discussed case to case. Now the most important question is, what about recent funding? Like I had told you already, the fund should have to be maintained for at least 3 months. Funds are not 3 months old. It is a recent transaction into sponsorer saving account or FD, which is recently made. Then what we can do is we have to present the source of these funds. Where has this money come from? Now below are some points through which we can justify recent deposits in saving or FDs. One is registered sales deed. Money which has come by selling the land. In this also you have to note that agreement to a sales deed is not acceptable. It has to be registered sale deed. Liquidating of fixed deposits are also fine. Funds transferred from PF accounts. Liquidating mutual funds, shares or policies, which we already discussed. Funds transferred from cooperative banks. J forms for relatively smaller deposits in case of agriculture income. Non-acceptable source of recent funds are sales of gold, agreement to sale of property, which I already told, agreement of repaying loan, and funds transferred by third-party sponsors. This all four types of funds are not acceptable in source of recent funds. Okay, now this was the first part of JSR requirements, that is financials. Now we'll talk about the second part. That is incentives of returning to home country. Now, how to check the incentives of returning back to home country? It will be assessed on the basis of annual income of sponsorers. Note that the expected minimum annual income of sponsorers should be from 14 to 16 lakhs, and ITR of last 2 to 3 assessment years will be asked for. Even though it looks very simple, but it is not. If we go by the requirement part, many people in India don't file ITRs because they have the agriculture income. But ITRs in Australia is mandatory. And we agree on the point that a lot of people in India have agriculture income, and on the basis of that, they don't have to file for the ITR. But we can't help in this point, but we have to file the ITRs if the student wants to study in Australia. In the case where people have not filled ITRs earlier, we have to plan the cases in such way we have sufficient time to file the ITR of the sponsorer. So we have to keep the ITR in the range of at least 16 lakhs, combined ITR of parents of at least 60 lakhs. Because if the ITRs is less than this, it gets really difficult, it gets really challenging. If the ITRs is below 16 lakhs, I say, it gets really difficult to clear the GSR part. Very important point I would like to share: if a student is financially sound, if the combined annual income of the parents is more than Australian dollar 87856, which is approx 50 lakhs in INR, then the university and DHA may not ask about their financial documents. Okay, one more point about the ITRs. What most of the sponsors do while they file their ITR, most of them will mention the source of income in the computation pages as income from business. The moment you mention income from business and the case is sent to the university is going to ask you for proof of the existence of business. Just note that if anybody is mentioning business in the computation page of the ITRs, which mentions source of income as business document, evidence of the existence of business will be asked for. It will be GST, registration certificate, current account statement, and numerous other things. Once the student has cleared the JSR, the next step will be to pay the tuition fees. After that, student will get unconditional offer letter or confirmation of fees. The student should proceed with the fees payment and accept the offer only upon receiving the unconditional offer letter. Please note, do not accept any offer which is conditional, or do not pay the tuition fees on conditional offer letter. Receiving an unconditional offer letter or confirmation of paying the tuition fees from the university is really important. Paying the tuition fees on a conditional offer letter, the case might get stuck for weeks and months until and unless the student doesn't clear the JSR requirements. Along with the tuition fees, a student also need to purchase the OSHC, which is Overseas Student Health Cover, for the next process of applying for COE. Moving on to the next point. After the student has accepted the offer letter, paid the tuition fees and purchased the OSHC, a confirmation of enrollment, that is a COE, is an official document which is issued by the Australian Educational Institute. It serves as a proof of enrollment and is a crucial requirement for obtaining a student visa to study in Australia. The COE contains important information such as student personal details, the educational institute details, the course details and including start and end dates. A lot of students are currently in their final semester of their undergrad course. There is a concept of conditional COE for the students who are not able to get the degree certificate currently, but it is confirmed that they will get it before the course start date. So there is a concept of conditional COE as well. Also note that it is only available for postgrad level students. Any student who is going for undergrad course, conditional COE will not be issued to UG level students. Furthermore, all universities does not provide conditional COE, only selective one provides that. Now we are done with the procedural part. Basically what all documents we need for visa. We have seen the completely starting with JSR assessment, which is done after the offer letter is issued. So offer letter, the JSR assessment, paying the tuition fees, purchasing the OHSC and getting the COE. These 5 things are really important till the visa stays. Before visa, we need to make sure all the 5 things are in place. Now we will talk about the student visa, which is subclass 500. With this visa, student can first participate in an eligible course of study, travel in and out of Australia, and work up to 48 hours a fortnight when your course of study or the training is in session. The cost of this visa is $710 plus surcharge, which is approx 720 Australian dollar. Now, what are the documents required for the visa? You can see the list of the documents on the screen. First of all, we require is ECOE, which is COE itself, OSHC letter, passport with all the pages scanned. All the page should be scanned and the page number should be clearly visible when you scan the passport. Welfare arrangements if the student is under 18. JS questionnaire with evidence. And JS is basically like we told you, JSR is a new requirement for Australian visa. Method or the assessment by which DSA assess the student for JSR is by questions. So there will be basically 4 questions in the visa application form, and we will be asking you all these 4 questions so that we can mention the same in the visa application form. Next is HAP ID, which is basically Health Assessment Program Student ID. Student applying for the visa have to do the health assessment as well. Academic documents, work experience documents in the case student is working after the graduation or whatsoever the case is. Financial documents, and the very crucial part of JSR, we have discussed it thoroughly. Updated resume of the student, government ID of the student and the sponsorers. In the end, thank you. I hope I was able to clear all your doubts and how to help to get clear the JSR requirements properly. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.